Warning. The video you are about to watch contains heavy spoilers and references for all of Doctor Who, including what episodes are not talked about directly. This video hinges on having seen the stories I'm talking about. If you clicked on this before watching the series or the specific episodes, that's probably a bad idea. Also, I don't own any of this, and I'm entitled to an opinion, so feel free to be nice and kind to me in the comments. Hey guys, it's been a while since I last posted, but in that time I released some music. You can go listen to it if you want, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Regeneration, specifically as a literary device in Doctor Who, the British TV science fiction show, the one with the big blue box. More specifically, in the appearances of Paul McGann as the Eighth Doctor. It's very hard not to include everything that has come out since and the oldest things that are referenced in each story, so I will be referencing those in relation to what they tell us now. We are, however, in a new wilderness era with only the war between the land and the sea coming out in 2025, which is when I first wanted to make this video, and now that the show is for sure out to the legal tender pasture until at least 2027, I will be only talking about Paul McGann, because he has the most resolution, as if anything is ever resolved in Doctor Who. The Timeless Child arc is seemingly just going to be ignored, as this...
So where are you from?
No, but we've done that. We talked about that. Back there, out loud. All four of us know it's Gallifrey.
Except... it's not.
What do you mean?
You don't know where you're from.
And this have been the only real mentions of anything 13 at all since 2020. By Generation is still unexplained to any real degree, and 15 seemingly swapped with Rose Tyler after resetting the universe because Billie Piper isn't the Doctor. So there isn't even a confirmed Doctor out there besides 14, who is David Tennant and retired. All of this is very confusing, even for someone who has been following the series for a few years. So just McGann. That's 2 live-action appearances. Let's see if this video is bigger on the inside. Do or don't go watch my previous video to hear a younger me say things worse. In this movie, Sylvester McCoy regenerates into Paul McGann. But wait, there's more. Before regenerating, he was shot multiple times and operated on by human doctors, who were very confused by the fact that the Doctor and all Time Lords share 2 hearts. This anesthesia also caused the nearly always apparent regenerative transient global amnesia to overcome the Eighth Doctor to an even more considerable degree than future incarnations. Before being put under and dying on the table because he has 2 hearts, the Doctor pulls off Dr. Grace Holloway's surgical mask, and we can infer from this that when a Time Lord regenerates, they will forget who they are or their main goals for why they are in an area, but do retain some basic memory of their death. When the Doctor regenerates in this movie, he's in a morgue, meaning he's fully dead by whatever measures this hospital would have used in the time between him flatlining on the table and being moved to the morgue. If you've never seen the show, stop watching this. But you might also think, isn't that when a Time Lord would want to regenerate? But most Doctors and Time Lords regenerate by themselves as a choice after a fatal injury and not after full death. This regeneration is also stretchy and slow, missing that destructiveness we see to the environment from 9 forward. This is more similar to the way we see the 1st, 3rd, and 5th Doctors regenerate, due to an outside force causing a death or near death and then being pushed into the next life. This makes for a Doctor with really great people skills, apparently. When this Doctor wakes up and becomes an unstoppable moving ball of chaos, he bursts down the doors to the morgue. This also seems to maybe be a function of regeneration. Immense strength in order to get this new life to their TARDIS or whatever the goal happens to be before regeneration. Old Paul here, once outside of the morgue and knocking out Will Sasso, goes to the employee lockers because Sylvester's toe tag might have heard them mention their Y2K New Year's Eve costume party. This video would be nearly impossible for me to make now without some kind of acknowledgement that Paul McGann's entire costume for this movie is meant to be a Wild Bill Hickok costume. If you heard that name and were like, what? Me too. Skimming the Wikipedia page, great resource, I found this guy was a U.S. Civil War soldier from Illinois that at one point fought and killed a mother bear in Kansas in 1860, before the Civil War even really started, as his duties protecting his wagon from Independence to Santa Fe on the Oregon Trail. What a dick! He then possibly shot a Wild West gang leader from behind a curtain and then did give all the money in his wallet, which was $35 at the time, nearly $1,300 today, to the widow. Maybe not a total dick. He then spent the Civil War throughout the Kansas region and even went as far as southern Missouri. During his time in the Union, he met back up with his friend, the real Buffalo Bill Cody. Not the guy from Silence of the Lambs, but the guy that he's named after. Then Hickok worked for the provost master as a detective in 1863, which really just meant he was tracking down lost money for the Union. The real Buffalo Bill Cody, again, the real guy, also said that he once saw William disguised as a Confederate officer in 1864. Apparently, he was a scout for the Union, just like his friend Bill, from then until 1865. When the war ended, he started gambling. To quote the Wikipedia article, the 1883 History of Greene County, Missouri, described him as, by nature, a ruffian, a drunken, swaggering fellow who delighted, when on a spree, to frighten nervous men and timid women. Maybe kind of a dick then. Which also describes the Doctor to a fault in this movie. There's moments where you're like, wow, what a weirdo, what a creep. Then he does something to fix whatever he's done to make things right. This video isn't about that guy, though. It's about our favorite, sometimes not a guy. Getting back to the actual costume part, the Doctor, when finding these clothes, throws out the gun belt, something that will come back later. Also, one of our companion characters found a fob watch. That will maybe come back later too. However, speaking of the things we can find now that help make this movie, the Leakley Bible introduced all of that shit that people hated about this movie, and all the things that I loved about it as a retrospective viewer. A bunch of lore and character explanation that exists in novels and audio dramas because it wouldn't have done well with ratings, because it was the 90s and you had to rely on a specific group of people in your area to make sure that a show you wanted to see was on television. This Bible is really more a collection of information and stories condensed into 46 pages, including now extended universe stories meant to pitch the idea of an American-made reboot, which, in the current climate of the show, just means repackaging everything again as mythology. In 1996, though, it meant something really new, mostly retelling all of the information that was well established about the Doctor through the perspective of the Doctor's grandfather, Barusa, who is also a Time Lord and would have been following a version of the Doctor in that version of the show, if the show had been picked up by any of the many people that strapped the distributor credit on this movie and now make it impossible to watch unless I buy the physical Blu-ray disc shipped all the way from the United Kingdom. That won't work in any of my region disc players. Okay, the Doctor in this Bible has quite a few backstory choices, as every showrunner has, that would have been insane to see, while also being on the level of The Timeless Child in terms of sheer crazy shit that totally rewrites everything. It does actually rewrite stuff, but it also had to explain all of that stuff to executives who would totally have to learn about every neat little factoid. Namely, there's several mentions of regeneration. Entry remark. I am reminded by my scribe that there may be a confusion concerning our Gallifreyan ability to regenerate. In terms of the blue planet, it is both a death and a rebirth. It is very sacred and profound to us. Also, agonizingly painful. Regenerations are triggered in several ways. Old age, mortal accident, by decree of the Time Lord Council, or by will. Regeneration produces a completely different body, chosen by the unconscious mind, much like a dream is chosen. And it profoundly affects one's personality and memory. I, for example, in an earlier regeneration, became a megalomaniac. Happily, it was a phase that passed. This is kind of exactly what I said earlier, but now there's evidence. Moving forward, remember the idea of the unconscious mind and the role it plays. In the instance of the Eighth Doctor, this is somewhat more apparent than the later regenerations. Also, look at Paul McGann and Sylvester McCoy next to each other. How'd that get there? Anyway, the movie we're trying to talk about, written by Matthew Jacobs and not John Leakley, involves a very few of these character choices that were in the Bible, but might have been more general groundwork thought up by Philip Siegel, who produced the movie. More specifically, I think the half-human thing, that all comes from the Gull. I mean, the guy had been trying to get Doctor Who back on the air since 1990 as a producer. I wouldn't be surprised if the one thing he made sure stays in the movie that might also be a TV show if enough people watch and like it is that he's half human. Except that they didn't like it, and now we're here. Where is here? The Doctor hasn't left the morgue yet? Shit. Once the Doctor has his clothes, still no shoes, he sits around looking for the face he saw right before he died. All the while, the Master, who is a sluggy snake thing now, took over the body of the guy who was driving the ambulance the Doctor was in after being shot, which only happened because the Master was executed after being put on trial by the Daleks. Except the Master's whole thing is not accepting that he is dying or dead, having been on his last life since his first appearance in the 70s. Being a not dead, dirty little slug, he slid inside the TARDIS console to break the time-traveling components and land the Doctor in front of gunfire in San Francisco in 1999. Anywho, the Doctor makes his way to the parking garage just as Grace Holloway, the lady surgeon that kinda killed him, gets fired for not wanting to cover up the existence of a guy with 2 hearts because she's a cardiovascular surgeon. And 2 hearts means double the fun. In this parking garage, he convinces Grace that he is both Sylvester McCoy and a new and hot Paul McGann. He does this by pulling out the medical probe in one of his now beating hearts that was left when he died. When they get to Grace's home, the Doctor explains regeneration.
He was dead too long this time. The anesthetic almost destroyed the regenerative process.
So that is why he's a little extra weird from here forward, and not just because he's like that. And given that this Doctor's main motif is this fucking pocket watch, there has to be a more logical explanation later in the series. Thanks, Russell. Anyway, the Doctor remembers who he is because of shoes and kisses, but really, Grace asks if he has a family. The Doctor mentions his father and him looking up at the stars when he was a boy on Gallifrey. If you read the required reading to like this movie, you know that his father was going to be some time guy named Ulysses, and that the Doctor was apparently born on Earth before tragically having an early first regeneration. This might be what he's referring to as being this early in life and recalling past memories happens pretty often for the Doctor. While he's locking lips and leaving spit, the Master uses the kid holding the pocket watch from earlier. His name is Chang Li. He also was the person that called the ambulance for the Doctor when the TARDIS landed right in front of him and the Doctor got shot. He also took all of the Doctor's things when he died, and that's why he's with the Master in the TARDIS now. Once they meet, the Master lies and says that actually the Doctor is evil, and they need to find him so the Master can have his lives back. Regenerations are also able to be transferred. What a fun piece of information that won't ever come up again. The plan to take these lives uses the Eye of Harmony, a device that only exists in this movie, which at my best total stab in the dark houses the soul of the TARDIS. They're alive, don't ask. And it grows given the amount of traveling done by the pilot, who is in this case, the Doctor. It opens when the Master uses Chang Li's eyes, and then the Doctor feels it happen. This is also what actually makes the Doctor remember exactly who he is, and that's why he kisses Grace this time. For extra background information, all Time Lords are psychic when they're in a Time Lord body. The Master isn't currently a Time Lord, but his essence is inside of an American human body. Anyway, all Time Lords are psychic to some extent, and they build psychic bonds with their ships and with each other. Given that the Doctor is the most active, exploring, and even interfering Time Lord in the universe, he has a very strong relationship with his ship, even more than any other character in the show. The Doctor is usually in a period of recovery for quite a bit longer than this incarnation, but with the Eye of Harmony being open, the Doctor now has all of his memories much quicker than they usually would. We're about halfway through this thing, so let's keep it chugging. Once the Eye is open, some real crazy shit starts to go down. TARDIS stands for time and relative dimensions in space. The most important word here being in. With the eye open, it all comes out. A TARDOS, if you would. All of this time and space looking out not only extends the psychic link between pilot and ship, but extends all of the time and relative dimensions past the blue box, which makes the Doctor able to walk through a pane of glass. It also allows Grace to call an ambulance because now she thinks they're both going crazy. Thankfully, Bruce is an ambulance driver, and now all of our characters meet in a big ambulance gumbo. And while they're mixing it up in this first responder pot, they get stuck in traffic, and the Doctor steals a motorcycle.
Would you stand aside before I shoot myself?
Then the Doctor and Grace go to get the beryllium clock they need to fix the malfunction caused by the Slug Master. And the Doctor reveals that he is half human in a conversation where the Doctor also says that regenerating gives the ability for Time Lords to change their species. And that's why the Master was that slug thing, actually called a deathworm morphant, after they disintegrated him on Skaro. Like I said in my first video on it, this movie is both crazy and dumb, but I love it. It also is probably what made the Eighth Doctor half human because of, again, human medicine. After getting the clock and entering the TARDIS, they forget all about those guys who were chasing them, but the guys chasing them didn't.
I always dress for the occasion.
And the Master hypnotizes Grace with his slug powers. After a scuffle, the Doctor reawakens to being put into this thing, and the Master uses Grace to open the eye because he killed John. No! The Doctor convinces her to run back to the console while he wriggles out of the contraption the Master has put him in. After another scuffle, the Master is sucked into the Eye of Harmony, even after the Doctor reaches out his hand. And eventually, the time vortex itself pulls him in, while the eye closes. The Doctor kisses Grace again, just for fun, and the movie is over. This movie both benefits and struggles from having to be a regeneration story in ways that are very, very hard to say. Given the limited time frame, they both have to include the Doctor being the Doctor and being a bumbling baby trying to remember themselves. But even if this is your first viewing experience of Doctor Who, you might get the impression that regeneration is meant to be very special and personal. They mention in the beginning monologue,
Time Lord has 13 lives, and the Master had used all of his.
This sentiment is carried through when the Master convinces Chang Li to join him, and says that the Doctor also wasted his lives, and then stole his own. It also shows us just how squishy and new a fresh Time Lord really is. We also know that there has to be some sort of exposure to the time vortex, or an equivalent Time Lord thing to awaken the Doctor and remember that they have to kick ass. Now that we've seen an easy enough example of an introduction story, let's see an exit.
Ever seen? Midnight tonight, this planet will be pulled inside out. Go behind the scenes as the Fox Tuesday Night Movie presents the motion picture event of the year. Doctor Who.
The Eighth Doctor is an incarnation defined by paradoxes and branching events, as his main existence is in extended media. Given the events of one of the most recent episodes, Rogue, we know that the Schalke Doctor, the War Doctor, and the Ninth Doctor are all valid incarnations, and can or could all come from a version of the Eighth Doctor to some degree, even though we see John Hurt regenerate into Christopher Eccleston at the end of Day of the Doctor. Time can, and often is rewritten, mostly just to fulfill whatever the BBC wants at the moment, but it's really just time. Basically, the numbers are just holdovers now and only really used by the fans, or very recently explained away as not really mattering by the show because the Doctor has always been special. This section of the video is really just so I can say that part. I'll get more into the validity of the regeneration cycle when we get to the time of the Doctor, if I ever find the time. However, the Night of the Doctor shows us the definitive version of the Doctor that we follow in the show as he regenerates into John Hurt and then into Christopher Eccleston. However, in the extended universe, which is also canon given the flexibility of time in the show and the rest of the intellectual property, the Eighth Doctor sees versions of his future self, including the Curse of Fatal Death Doctor, and a ginger incarnation that intersects with the Seventh Doctor's life. All of this to say that there are infinite Doctors and there are infinite versions of the last great Time War and its own resolution or destruction of the universe. The only thing we can ever know for sure about the history of the universe or of the Doctor at any given time is the Doctor's dialogue and knowledge of the intended route of time, which he is one to nudge around quite a bit.
I'm a doctor, but probably the one you're expecting.
The only definitive version of the Eighth Doctor that exists in the same continuity as the show is in the movie and this short. There is also the Time Lord Victorious multimedia story that came out, the 10th Doctor's incarnation, and also other Big Finish stories where there's some supposedly great Paul McGann performances, but nah. What I can recommend in good conscience is the Eighth Doctor comic from Titan. They're all about the Eighth Doctor stumbling across a companion and a to-do list he can't remember making. It only has 5 issues and a very Doctor Who conclusion. They're also part of other Doctor Who Titan comics. I haven't read those, so I can't speak to them. Who I can speak to is George Mann, writer of all 5 issues. I hope you are in talks with the BBC right now. Moving on to the short, where the thing the video is about happens.
It feels really good to be back. Look at me, man. Never look better. I tell you what. He wants to be good. He's determined to avoid the war. It's a surprise. It's a surprise to everybody. In fact, they're trying to really keep it a genuine surprise, and I really hope that they do. You know, it's really what we needed. It was something that was really seriously missing, and it's been a real privilege.
It's nearly 2 decades later, and the Eighth Doctor has to regenerate into the War Doctor, as the Eighth Doctor's whole thing in extended media since the 2005 revival has been an avoidance of the Time War wherever he can find refuge. Usually that means finding planets who are fighting their own wars and are therefore too busy to look up at the stars. This also means that nearly every companion of the Eighth Doctor is also escaping their own lives to redefine themselves as specifically independent, better people, unless they die horrifically. Anyway, this appearance of 8 was written by Stephen Moffat, an all-around good-ish Doctor Who writer who you might have heard of. Really being a good Doctor Who writer means using what you've already got and connecting it to the other stuff that also exists to say something about something. In my opinion, Paul McGann should have just been in Day of the Doctor as another Doctor, despite his existence as the middle child of the classic series and the new one. He also exists totally separated from them, and he is one of the most in-it Doctors I have ever seen. There is clearly such a giddiness in every action he takes, while he is also able to flip on a dime and be that serious, very meaningful person that every life in the universe hinges on to keep them safe without even knowing. The Eighth Doctor is an unsung hero in the best of ways. His entire existence has been to be in the background, where there's pieces that come specifically from Paul McGann, but also from good writing when it's good. With the show in its current state, just give me more McGann. Put him in Circuit Breaker 2, cowards. Okay, back on topic. It's 2013, and the show has just turned 50 years old, but the movie isn't even 20 yet. There's a big anniversary film about to be shown in theaters. The last one was on cable television. Names included are Matt Smith, Jenna Coleman, Billy Piper, David Tennant, and John Hurt, who plays the version of the Doctor who fought in the Time War, who was previously rejected and shunted off the Doctor's timeline as the rest of the Time War, which existed temporally locked from the universe, even though there are multiple, and it's this inconsistency which makes me ask, what the hell is regeneration? John Hurt was revealed in The Name of the Doctor, and lets Matt Smith be the end of the 13 life cycle. But there ain't no McGann or Eccleston in the movie. How's there a John, you ask? Good question. The Night of the Doctor is your answer. A 7-minute short where they have to kill a man. They also have to give you a list of people that the 8th Doctor traveled with in all those big Finnish stories I was talking about that may or may not really count depending on which guy who stinks you ask. Anyway, using what they've got from the classic series, Moffat decided on the Sisterhood of Karn, who appeared in The Brain of Morbius, a 4th Doctor story where they imply that there were more Doctors before Hartnell. Before they said only 13 next season. I haven't seen The Brain of Morbius. Don't judge me. People only care to mention it now because of Chibnall, but like it's McGann and Moffat time. Speaking of McGann and the 4th Doctor, there is an image in the Weekly Bible from before with just straight up the 4th Doctor discovering the tomb of Rassilon. Rassilon will also come back later. Now though, it's Time War time. A little background, within the Time War, Karn is a planet that attracts crashing ships like the 8th Doctor collects trauma that will come back in a few incarnations. Karn is a scrap heap with some devout nuns in a cave. They still keep the flame that they kept in the Brain of Morbius and work on elixirs that trigger specific regenerations, the thing we're talking about. The Sisterhood finds the Doctor when he lands the TARDIS on a crashing ship with this lady named Cass, who does not want to travel with him because she's actively caught in the last Great Time War and just saw the equivalent of the Hindenburg being piloted by Albert Einstein about to drop the Fat Man on Pearl Harbor. Once the crashing ship crashes, he's discovered by the Sisterhood, who drag him to a cave to inform him that he would be dead from his injuries, causing him to regenerate into one of those random other incarnations from earlier, had they not restored him to life to give him a choice. That's right, this is one of 2 regenerations where the Doctor has had direct choice over his next incarnation. The 2nd Doctor was also given this choice by his own people, but couldn't decide on his next life. So the 3rd Doctor was chosen by the Time Lord Council that was exiling him. 8, however, knows now that he can no longer run as he had before. He has to become the last Doctor. He takes Cass's gun belt, I told you it would come back, and tells the sister that he needs to be warrior. Upon receiving his elixir, he apologizes to his companions of the past, that he brought into conflict and death where they had nearly no stakes previously. And he even apologizes to Cass, who is going to die anyway. What a great guy. Too bad he's dying. Speaking of, he shouts for everyone to get out! Bringing back that personalness to regeneration. He then delivers the hardest departing line in the entire show.
Physician, heal thyself.
This is the first instance of regeneration having this yellow shooting off effect, which has been a staple of the 2005 show's visuals. Except that this short came out in 2013. I put this short here as it's the end of the 8th Doctor's life, and I don't want to jump around too much more than I'll already have to for Day of the Doctor. What we really get to learn here is that the War Doctor comes from, not a death, but an enlistment into a war, where the first shot was fired ages ago. That's right, the 4th Doctor, who I mentioned, fires the first shot of the Time War in Genesis of the Daleks, when under the order of other Time Lords. He does this by traveling to, you guessed it, the Genesis of the Daleks, and accidentally informing Davros, their creator, that freaking time travel is real. Also, Moffat isn't at fault for the existence of the last Great Time War. Russell T Davies is, by technicality. However, there were mentions of Gallifrey's surface reflecting an internal conflict, Time Lords are psychic, in the Weekly Bible, which, in retrospect, would have been as easy to follow as a series as the Time War and sticking to being the last of the Time Lords has been for 20 years. So what did we learn? we learn that the Eighth Doctor is a dweeb, and everyone hates him. In all honesty, the Eighth Doctor only exists if you look for him, so his regeneration is the same. It's literally a YouTube video. That's all he gets for holding down the monthly Big Finish audios in the late 90s, when everyone thought that Doctor Who was dead. And you only get it if you care enough to look up who the hell the Sisterhood of Karn are, or if you've paid $20 per box set audio drama, which isn't very accessible, which has really been the draw of the Doctor Who brand since the first episode. It was on television, and you would have had to happen across it after the Kennedy assassination, or hear about it from another person. The Eighth Doctor is, in my opinion, the most fantastical. While other doctors or showrunners use a lot of similar plot things to give the Doctor a whimsical feel, Paul McGann's Doctor captures it almost intrinsically. All the while, he still has to find these very hard-hitting moments in this show about time travel. Paul McGann is a very, very talented actor, and I think he needs to be back in the show. I would love to make a sequel video talking about everything past this short and Paul McGann's run. I also love Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant and Matt Smith, and I would love to talk about Regeneration and their stories, as well as Peter Capaldi, and even to an extent Jodie Whittaker and Nchudigawa. I would love to talk about every single one of them, but that is really hard. Please feel free to subscribe and like and comment and do all the things that make YouTube videos good. As I almost never say, goodbye, good night.